Raleigh Romero robbery. 65-year-old Ismael Barroso. And I'm never the guy to say I told you so, but I told you so in this one, man. I tried warning y'all. Y'all go back in the post. This was the most embarrassing main event in boxing history. This was embarrassing. This was awful. And it lived up to the expectations. It's, you know, you don't put on a circus act and expect the circus not to break out. And you're going to hear the word incompetence, inexplicable when it comes to Tony Weeks in this stoppage. It's none of that. This was pure, unadulterated corruption. That's what this was. This 65-year-old dude is about to get his hands on a belt. We can't do anything with that. We can't market that. So we need that to stop. You know, we need that to stop. And I explained it last week on the podcast. It's like, don't underestimate Raleigh Romero's ability to F things up. And he was effing things up in this fight. They expected him to come into this fight and cruise, right? They had their plans in place in case that wasn't going to happen. But Raleigh Romero is just not a good fighter. And not only is he not good, fellas, he's not marketable. He's not. They're lying to you about everything. If he was marketable, he would be able to sell out a small venue in his hometown, and he can't because they comped that arena last night. They comped it. Everybody who got in there got in for free. He's not marketable. He's not good. They've been lying to you from the beginning. They've been scamming the market. This is the Tank Davis theorem. They build up these fighters that are B-sides on Tank Davis's fights as better than they are. This guy is terrible. He's trash. I'm sorry. And what you had last night was a guy who somehow stumbles his way upon a Tank Davis fight last year. And I tried to explain this to you last year, and I had people telling me, no, the guy's actually good. He's a power puncher. He got a gift decision against Marinez already. Looked terrible in that fight. Looked terrible against Yigit. Looked like Bambi on ice before the Tank Davis fight. The fight before against Yigit. Stumbles his way upon that fight. They lied to you about who he is. Loses that fight by knockout at 135. And what happens? A year later, the next fight, a guy who is number 34 at lightweight in the only extended rankings we have, somehow stumbles his way upon a title fight, a real title fight. This isn't a Reggie. This isn't a Tank Davis Reggie belt. This is a real title fight in a real division at 140 full of killers. Fighting a 65-year-old Venezuelan who has no quality wins. And by the way, this is another reason I'm aggravated. I took Barroso plus 650 to win against Raleigh because Raleigh shouldn't be 11-1 favorite against anybody on planet Earth. And he's getting beat up. We get to the 9th round. He gets a knockdown that he didn't deserve. And I can even almost explain that away, right? Maybe in real time it looked like a punch, but he's not getting hit. He's throwing back, and Tony Weeks stops the fight. Why does Tony Weeks stop the fight? Because they can't mess up the bag. They had plans for Raleigh against Tank rematch or Raleigh against Ryan Garcia for a real title at 140. And they can't mess up the bag by having a 65-year-old Venezuelan who is not marketable at all get his hands on a belt that they need desperately to somehow keep this Raleigh Romero circus act scam going. And this is boxing. And you have journalists out there explaining this away like, oh, this is just boxing, you know, it's just boxing, it's not that bad. Leonard Ellerby's coming after me on Twitter for criticizing this fight. Al Bernstein's coming after people on Twitter saying, you know, we've been putting on quality content. You're not putting on quality content. What you saw last night was an embarrassment. That should have never happened. WBA shouldn't have sanctioned this as a real title fight. It shouldn't have passed that. It shouldn't have passed Showtime execs greenlighting this card for a main event, a fight that wouldn't have been an undercard on a ShowBox a couple years ago. And this is where we're at with Showtime Boxing. We got ShowBox fights on Showtime Championship boxing cards. We got Showtime Championship boxing cards on Showtime pay-per-views. The quality of the content has gone down significantly. And last night, I was thinking about after the fight, is this rock bottom? All things being considered, Is this rock bottom? Is this the worst thing I've seen since I've been following boxing 25 years, all things considered? Of them clearly, this was the most blatant example of boxing's power brokers not caring about the consumer at all and just shoving something down their throat and selling the false goods. And Leonard Ellerby coming after the consumers who are calling this fight what it is on Twitter. I'm simply calling it what it is and saying, I hope people pull up on you at fights. Stuff like that to a customer who's simply complaining about the content you're putting out instead of putting out better content. Don't fool the market, just put on genuine content. That's all we're asking. Was this rock bottom of them shoving something down our throat? And not only that, this was the most blatant example of corruption I've ever seen. Altogether, from false rankings, you know, from a faux main event that shouldn't have happened for a title, to a referee who is competent. Tony Weeks is competent. You know, we can complain about some things he's done in the past, but he's a competent referee. This was the most blatant example of corruption we have ever seen. And if it wasn't so laughable, it would be sad. It's sad, but it's laughable. So I guess all I could do is laugh at it. But what an embarrassment. And if you put on a circus act, don't be surprised when a circus breaks out. I mean, Rolly Romero is somehow a real champion at 140. Good Lord, man. What have we done to this sport? Goodness gracious.